Think we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Barnes& Noble Midday Mystery Virtual Series. I am Riley Sager, the New York Times bestselling author of books like The House Across the Lake and The Only One Left. And it is an absolute thrill to be chatting today with the New York Times bestselling author of fan favorites, beloved by readers, The Broken Girls, The Sundown Motel, The Book of Cold Cases, and her new book, Murder Road, is coming out tomorrow. Our queen of all things spooky, Simone St. James.
Hello.
Hello. So this is very exciting for me because we have never spoken
Not
before.
live in person. We have emailed
No.
and we chatted and we have read each other's books. But like I was like excited. They're like, you were going to talk to Riley. And I was like, I will do that. I will talk to Riley all you want.
When they asked me to do this, yeah, I like jumped at the chance. I'm like, oh heck yes, please, let's do.
Yeah, and they were
So
like, well, it's an hour long. And I was like, yeah, we can talk for an hour. I think we could talk to probably till like midnight, you and me, but we'll do an hour.
we can squish in an hour.
We
So
can.
first, Murder Road comes out tomorrow.
Yes.
How are you feeling? Do you get nervous? Do you get excited? Is it overwhelming?
Yeah, it's the moment where it like starts to feel real. Like it's real. Like it doesn't seem real for there's a whole period where it doesn't seem real. And I have the when the book becomes a physical book, which here it is, I got the physical book, that feels real. And then people are starting to read it and that feels real. And it becomes very exciting. There's a long period where after you finish the book, but before it comes out, you just are like, did that really happen? I don't know. But like that, then it's like, no, it really did. It's exciting.
Yeah, there is a very strange effect. Like, did I do that? Did I write that? Because like it blends after a while and it's strange. And once you write a book, it's not your own anymore. It belongs to the readers. And
Yeah,
that's
and
an
the
odd
last time
feeling.
you saw it, it was a Word document. So you're just like, I don't know, it was just a Word document that I hit send on, and then now it's like, oh no, it's a real thing. Yeah.
It is such a strange feeling.
Yeah, it's
So
fun.
is this your first midday mystery event?
Yes. Yes, it is.
Okay. For people in the viewers, like, is it your first time? First timers, raise their hands or say hi. Because normally what we do is we discuss a little bit and then we open it up to like we ask you guys to submit questions and you guys
Hey,
absolutely
everybody.
delivered on the questions. And so like a lot of these I was going to ask myself. So we will ask them together. How does that sound?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think everyone wants to hear us do a big blathery thing.
Yeah.
Let's just
Well, first question, tell us about Murder Road, the
okay,
book.
well, I can start with that. So Murder Road is set in 1995. It's my retro story, which, yes, I am old enough to remember 1995, as are you.
Same
And
here.
it's about a young couple on their honeymoon, and they've just gotten married the day before, and they're driving to their honeymoon, and they take a wrong turn and they pick up a hitchhiker on the side of the road, and it turns out the hitchhiker is stabbed and it dies in the back of their car. And they get drawn into this whole dangerous mystery in this small town of this road where, over the years, a number of murders have occurred and dead bodies have been found along this road. And there's an urban legend about the ghost of a girl who's seen on this road, and nobody knows if it's real or not. And they get sucked into this whole case and this young woman who died in their car. And it's just a wild ride of these two helpless newlyweds who on the first day of their marriage just get drawn into this just giant vortex of danger and suspense. And it was a lot of fun to write, and I hope that people find it a lot of fun to read.
We will talk about that couple later.
Yeah.
They're so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But I have to discuss, and no spoilers, like we will not, this is a
No,
spoiler-free zone,
spoiler free. Yeah.
but the opening chapter of this book was harrowing. Like I remember I was reading it and I was like white knuckling it. And when the first chapter ended, I just was like, why did she do this to me? Like it was so like why did you, we just jump in, like we're like in that car with this couple on that road, and it's
Yeah.
so vivid and so stressful. And so like, was that an intentional thing to just be like, I want to grab the reader by the collar and just shake them? And because you did.
Yeah, well, that scene was kind of the first scene that came into my mind, and that was almost the inspiration for the rest of the story. Was I had this scene in my head, and I thought like, what if you picked up this hitchhiker, and like, what would you do? Like, would you stop? Would you pick them up? Like, and how a character reacts in that scene really says a lot about them. And then I thought, well, that's a really great scene. And then I thought, well, what if they were like newly married, like they're in love and they know each other really well, but at the same time, the very first day of your marriage, you don't know everything about the other person. So, like, what if the very first day of your marriage with your spouse, this crazy thing happened and you would be seeing maybe a side of your spouse that you had never seen before? And like, where would these characters go from there? And so, actually, that first scene was sort of the first one I saw in my head. And as a writer, I was like, well, who are these people and what happens next? And that's how I kind of started building the story out when I first came up with it.
And we have a lot of questions, like the submitted questions. I'm going to try to read the names of the people ask them, but we have like one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. We had like nine people ask variations of the same question, which
Okay.
is, like how did you go about writing this book? What is the process like of any writing a book for you? And
Yeah.
how did Murder Road differ? And if you did any special research?
So yeah, this one just started again with that sort of idea, but a book really cooks in the back of my mind, usually for almost like maybe even a year before I start writing it down. Like usually while I'm working on the previous book, just a trickle of ideas are starting to come in. I'm thinking of settings or like some characters are talking to me, or like I just said, there's maybe a scene, but I don't know the whole story yet, but there's a scene kind of coming to me. So a book really boils for a long time in the back of my mind before I even pitch it to my publisher or even start or write anything down. And so that's a long process. And with this book, I just really wanted to give the reader experience, which is an experience I wanted, but I wanted to have a similar experience of like if you watch a really, really, really good episode of The Supernatural or The X-Files or Buffy, like there's a specific like satisfied feeling you get when you watch a really good episode of one of those shows. And I was like, man, I wish a book would deliver that feeling. And so I was really going for that because that's a feeling I enjoy. And as far as research, like I just said, like I'm old enough to remember 1995. So a lot of what's in here is my memories. And I had to look up a few things. Like I had to look up like when was the OJ Simpson trial on TV and like sort of movies that just come out in July 1995. Like I need to look up that month. But everything else is like my memory, what we ate, what we wore, what music we listened to, like how we got around, how much things cost. I mean, I just remember all that. And so I didn't have to do a lot of extraneous research on this particular book, for sure.
Yeah, so we'll get it, like why did you set this in 1995? Laura Creek asked this.
Why 1995? Well, first of all, it's kind of a love letter to the 90s because I remember it well and it was a great decade for me. And there was a lot, I mean, there was a lot of great stuff in that decade. So it's a bit of a love letter to the 90s. Again, a bit of a love letter to the TV shows of the 90s, like X-Files and Supernatural and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and some of those kinds of shows that were on. It's a bit of a love letter to that. And other than that, when you're writing a suspense book, it's a lot of fun to write characters who don't have cell phones and can't just Google things and can't look at things up on GPS. Like the very first chapter, they are lost. They're genuinely lost. And she has to open the glove box and pull out the paper map and unfold it and try and figure out where they are on this paper map because they don't know where they are and what direction they're going. And that's an experience you don't get anymore. And it added a bit to the danger and the suspense a bit to be able to have these characters be disconnected and lost and just not able to easily find the answers they're looking for. They have to like get in their car and go drive and talk to people and get on the road and figure some of this stuff out. So it's just a really fun challenge as a writer to put your characters in that situation and then just like make them go.
And also, I saw someone in the chat said, and no cell phones, which is a
No
very
cell phone.
important thing. Modern. Modern technology is wonderful to use. It makes writing thrillers so much more difficult
So
because everything
hard.
is at our fingertips, literally.
Yeah, and then you're just
And so
writing
that,
like, okay, well, your main character's like, oh my God, what happened 20 years ago? I'll just Google it. But you come up with new challenges as a writer. Like you're like, okay, well, you have to come up with the answers that they want are not on the internet. So you just go back to your characters, like, because I just read your next one, and like you had to do that, and I could, and like, but you pull that off where it's like, well, the answers are not on the internet, and so I'm just gonna have to get out of the house and go wandering through the woods and find what I'm looking for. And so, but it is an extra challenge, because you just know readers too are going to be like, well, why didn't they just look this up? Like, obviously, this isn't very hard to do. So you're like, okay, I have to like be extra challenged so that the reader is like feeling the danger, right?
right. So, first question. This is from Jazz Marie Arkey, I think is the way you pronounce your last name. Sorry if I butchered your last name, Jazz Marie. Is Murder Road a real road?
No, I made it up. But it's sort of an amalgamation. I really liked the concept of the urban legend. Every a lot of small towns and a lot of rural places, they have their little pet urban legend, and everyone, especially the kids and the teenagers, kind of know the local urban legend and who believes it and who doesn't, and does anyone know the real story and who's gonna, there's the one spot where all the teenagers kind of dare each other to go. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of the story. And I thought, I just wanted to make my own urban legend. It's not based on a real one. Um, I just wanted to sort of make one that was sort of an amalgamation of various ones that I've heard, and also was kind of specific to these characters because no spoilers, but there is a point to this urban legend that ties into what's going on in this town and at this particular time. So it also ties into my plot in a really interesting way.
Now, what's interesting is you live in Canada,
Yep.
and I thought that murder roads were a distinctly American thing because like every state seems to have its own murder road. I'm in New Jersey. I think we have like five of them. Like there are murder roads all over the place here. And so when I was doing my research, I'm like, oh, that's right. She lives in Canada. I'm like, I did not. Oh, I see Clinton, New Jersey. Yes, there is the famous murder road there, allegedly. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, is are there murder roads in Canada?
Well, I mean, I would probably say we don't have as many as you Americans have because you guys in your interstates and your roads. But Canada is a big country, and we got a lot of highways and we got a lot of roads, and we drive long distances just like you guys do. So yeah, there's definitely murder roads, but probably I would say probably on a whole fewer here than there, but it is a concept here, and the urban legends are definitely a concept here. Like we have our urban legends for sure. Every small town has it, and we have a lot of ghost stories in Canada and local ghost stories, and people are like, oh, if you see this, the local like spook that haunts the whatever abandoned house, and like we have all that stuff. So I grew up with all of that.
Was it fun creating your own urban legend? I imagine it was.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I like, because I always get asked, like with every book, like, is this based on a real murder case? Is this based on a real this or that or the other thing? And it never is. And it's always because it's more fun for me to just make it up because I don't have to tie myself to reality. And I get to make it something that I think is scary, and I get to make it tie into my plot the way I want, and I just don't have to care about what the reality is. That's the fun of being a fiction writer, I think. I just use my imagination to hopefully its max. I really just try and make everything up. It's also why I like to make up my own small towns for my books because it's more fun not to have to actually have to be tied to any type of reality. I just make it however I want it to look in my mind. And for me, that's the fun of being a fiction writer, is to just invent it all.
Yeah, that is the most fun for me too, where like you could, and also when you're making stuff up, it can help you serve your plot. Like
Yes.
I've where it's you can set something in a real place, follow like a real urban legend, but then you sort of have to like make your plot go around that instead of the
Right.
opposite, where you're like, oh, I need X in this town, so I'm going to make the town be this, former mining camp with an abandoned coal mine or something, and it's just more fun that way.
It's more fun. And no matter what, like no matter how well, if you've said based it on a real town, no matter how well you know that town, there's somebody out there who knows that town better than you. And they're going to be like, that corner store is not there in 1981. It was built in 1983. And you're like, okay, well, how about I just make it up?
Yeah, it's just so much more fun making
Yeah.
it up. So back to like the writing process. Like, do you, you know, I know it's more complex than this, but like pantser, where you write by the seat of your pants, or plotter, where you outline. Which one
I
are you?
do I do a mix because I do, like I said, the germ of the story starts very early before I write anything down, before I send anything to my publisher. And I don't know much about the story during that time. I know there's something that intrigues me. And as a, like, if I was a reader, I would be like, is that a book I would read? Yeah, that's a book I would pick up. Like, that's just something about the story that intrigues me, but I don't know all the answers. I don't know the answer to the mystery. I don't know the end yet. And I let it cook for a while. And then when I become really serious about it, like, and I'm like, okay, no, this is actually is like some, as you know, some ideas are novel ideas, full novel ideas, but some ideas are just like interesting ideas, but they're not going to really sustain like a 400-page book. And you're like, okay, I like that, but I can't make a whole book out of that. But if I know that it's the meaty idea that I can really make into a book, I sit down and I start outlining, and I really want to know who the characters are is one of the first things I want to know before I even know the rest of the plot. Like, I want to know who these people are and why do I care? Why do I care about them? Even as a writer, why do I care about them? And then what's interesting about them to me? And then I try and figure out sort of what the resolution to the mystery is in a general sense. And when I sit down to seriously write the book, I have those things nailed down. I don't have a scene by scene outline nailed down. I don't know every character. I don't know how everybody's going to react to everything that happens to them. I don't know everything that happens. I kind of know where it's starting. I have in my mind a general idea of where it's going to end, but the whole middle, I don't really haven't worked out scene by scene. And so there's a lot of discovery in that part of the process. I'll write things and I'll just be like, for example, I had in this book, and again, this is not a spoiler, but I have my main characters, they end up at this B&B. The cops take them to this B&B to stay, and this woman opens the door at the B&B, and I wrote that scene and I was like, well, this is just a walk-on character, this lady who owns the B&B, and she just lets them into the B&B. And as soon as she appeared on the page, I was like, what's her story? Like, I want to know what her story is. And so she ended up being a secondary character in the book, but I didn't know that until I actually put her on the page. So there's still surprises as I'm writing. So that's why it's a bit of a mix. Like, I knew kind of what that scene was, but when I put Rose on the page, I was like, well, I actually am interested in this person. I want to know her backstory. So, I just kept bringing her into the scenes because, so sometimes it's still surprising. It's a bit of a mix of a pantsing and applauding.
I think I froze there for a little bit. Guys, my internet is being very persnickety today, just FYI. So if I freeze or something, like, I'm still here, vanish. If I disappear, I'll be right back.
All right.
But like everyone can see me and hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So when you're doing this, like, sort of like the start, sort of the finish. Is the middle really hard for you? Because the middle's for me awful,
Yeah.
torturous sometimes. Where you're like, I don't know how to get from here to here, and it's driving me nuts, and I have a deadline.
Yes, and the middle is the big crisis of confidence point. The middle is where you're like, I have no idea why I told anyone I could write a book because I have no clue how to do this, even though I've done it a number of times already. You get to that middle and you're like, why did I tell anyone I know how to do this job? It is hard. And you want to, because you're always, the middle is that balance where you want to keep the action going and the suspense going, but you're not ending the book yet. So you're not getting into the big climactic scene yet, but you're trying to, oh God, yeah, it is the middle is very, very tough. And it's where I write the slowest. Like, I'll write the first 5 to 10 chapters really quick because I'm like, I'm excited. I'm like, who are these people? I want to know what's going on in this story. And then I'm like, uh-oh. And then you write the middle slower. But then you know the end. So then like when you get to the last third of the book, like for me, to write it is pretty quick because I can see it in my head. But yeah, the middle is very difficult every time. It never gets easier,
every
like every book.
every time. Like I was told that it would get easier, and it has not gotten easier. And I feel like I've been like lied to by people.
It never gets easier. And like every book, it doesn't matter how many times I've done it. Every book I get to the middle and I'm like, I can't do this. Why does anyone
Yes,
think I can do this? Like, what is wrong with you people that you think I can do this? And then after
you
by the end, I'm like, oh, I did it. I did it again. Looks like I did it.
you had the moment where you're like, I don't know how, I forgot how to do this, or how did I do it beforehand? And it doesn't matter how many times. There's always that
Doesn't
moment where
matter.
like
It's
someone made a
crazy.
mistake. Someone said I could write this and should write this, and they're paying me to write this, and they made a dire mistake.
This is the worst book that has ever been attempted. It's not even done. It hasn't even been written. This is terrible. And everyone's going to hate. My publisher is going to be like, we cannot publish this. Please go away. We're never calling you again. Like that crisis of confidence happens in the middle of every book, every time, every
And
time.
usually at like the most inconvenient times too, where
Yeah.
you're at your lowest, your imposter syndrome comes and like just kicks you in the head. You're like,
Yeah.
ah.
Yeah. It's like they're just going to be like, lose my number. We don't know you. We don't know who you are. Never speak to us again. Goodbye. And it's like, okay, I deserve it.
So I want to talk about, and I don't think anyone asked this first. I'm going to look into like if you guys are putting questions in the Q&A. Um, I'm going to look at some of these. You've gotten a lot of questions. I see one from Joan. I see one from Kate. Um, well, actually, first I'm going to go back to someone. Rachel Ocha asked this: Has the ending ever changed from what you originally planned it to be? That's a very good question.
It has, but usually no. Usually I stick with what I came up with in the beginning, but it is flexible. If I come up with a better idea or I get partway through and I realize that ending is not going to work, yeah, I can change it and I have changed it. But that's only happened like once or twice. Usually by the time I start writing the book, it's been in my mind long enough that I have a pretty good idea. Like the idea for the ending is pretty good. So, and I do get to that crisis of confidence in the middle where I'm like, I don't know if this ending is going to work. But if I just kind of stick with it, I'd realize, yes, it is. Like my original idea was a good one. So it has happened, but that's not normally what happens. Normally, what I come up with, it's been cooking in my brain long enough that it's pretty solid.
That brings a good point. The We know what the ending is, and so like in our minds are like, oh, this ending works, but you never really know until someone else reads
No.
the book. And so like a twist that you might think is amazing, you don't know it works until someone else reads it. And so it's very weird to kind of guard where you know your end point and you're sticking to it, but you don't know if it works.
Yes, and you have to have faith by the end of the book that you're like, well, I thought this was a good idea, so I just have to trust my former self, my past self, that my past self knew what she was doing, and just stick with it. And that's why when you have a publisher and you send it off to your editor, and it's like, well, if this stinks, my editor will tell me. Like the editor is the one who will be like, well, they don't say it rudely, but they will be like, this needs work, or this needs to be reworked, or this there's certain parts that don't make any sense. Like there is that layer there where someone at the publisher will be like, you need to go back and fix this. But that's again, that's only happened to me once or twice where I had to do major reworking after I turned it in. Like every book gets revised, but I'm talking about like rip out a section and rewrite it. It's very rare. So I usually am keeping my publisher sort of like giving them sort of updates like, well, this is my plot and here's where I'm at. And so, they're not really shocked when they get the manuscript either. So
Oh, see, that's interesting because I don't. Like I give a one-page synopsis. This is the next book, yay or nay, and then they don't really see it until like Here
Well,
it
I give them
is.
no, really, because I give them this little synopsis because like I say, I've worked out sort of the answer to the mystery, so I give them that, and then I usually by that point I've written the first couple of chapters, so I give them the first maybe 3 chapters because I have written it at that point, so they can get a taste of what these characters are like and what the setting is like, and from there, no, they do not see. Nobody sees my book until it's completely finished. Some authors are like or they'll have like critique partners or whatever, and they send them like chapters or like individual chapters or like bits and pieces. And I'm like, that is my nightmare. Like no one sees the full manuscript until it's done. I don't send bits and pieces to anybody.
Yeah, the only time I actually like revealed the ending to my editor and agent was with the house across the lake because it was so
Bananas?
bonkers, banana
Yeah,
pants, however you want to
banana
put it,
pants
that I
in the
knew it was
best
like,
way.
okay, they need to be in on this one. I can't just drop this in their lap. They need to know what I'm doing here. And like luckily they were both on board because but yeah, that was really the only time.
Oh,
So
interesting.
we have a lot of questions regarding ghosts and the supernatural. And
Okay.
so yeah, we have one from Kate Foucher. We have do, 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 do. I'm sorry, I'm like leaving out the names of the people who ask these questions and I can't find them, but like Ghost, what fascinates you about the supernatural? Why do you enjoy writing about it?
Um, well, as a writer, it just for me adds such an extra layer to the story, and it allows me to put my characters in extra danger, and danger that again, like I get to make it up. I don't have to be, it doesn't have to be bound by reality. And so I like that aspect of it as a writer. I like putting characters in the situation where that extra layer of danger is and watching what they do and how they react. You get to add an extra psychological layer in where these characters are wondering if what they're seeing is real, and when they're faced with the something that's potentially paranormal, different people have different reactions. Some people are like absolutely not, some people already are like yes, that's what it is, other people are questioning themselves. So you get to really bring out a lot of character when you bring the supernatural in. And like I said before, I grew up on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and X-Files and Supernatural, and like that just is like the supernatural is just brought in because that just makes the story more fun, and it makes it more dangerous and it makes it more interesting and it makes it more suspenseful. And for me, it just really ups the stakes, and it ups the suspense, and it ups the action sometimes. And I don't know. It's very, it's the main thing I get asked about in my books. Like so many people like find either they're either on one side or the other of like, is it real or not? And my whole books are like, I don't really, it is or it isn't. Like I think it's possible personally, but like it's all about the story. Like, doesn't it make it a more fun story though? I'm not trying to convince you that it is or it isn't real. Like that's not what I'm trying to do with the story. Like I just dropping these characters in and like like what happens if they were confronted with this, like what would you do, what do people do? It's like a real tension moment where like your characters are like faced with something and how do they react, and like there's just so much you can do with that moment.
Well, everything is more fun with ghosts.
That's what I
That's
think.
basically, yeah, like it's and like as a kid, like Scooby Doo, I love Scooby, like anything with ghosts. I was like, yes, even though I was scared of like
Yeah,
so do you sort of like do you believe in the supernatural? Have you had any supernatural experiences?
I haven't personally had a face-to-face supernatural experience. It's not what I've encountered, but I do believe it's possible. Like I believe it's absolutely possible. I believe almost anything is possible. And readers tell me their ghost stories all the time. Like and I love it. I'm like, and that's what, again, like everything's better with ghosts. Like when you're sitting around with people and people are like, well, here's the ghost story I know, and here's the ghost story, here's what happened to my grandpa, and here's what I happened to me. And like, yeah, that's a fun conversation for me. So readers tell me their ghost stories all the time and I love it. So um I don't know. I just find it, and I'm terrified. that's terrifying. If I came across a ghost, I would like it terrifies me. So I write about what scares me. And like you say, everything is better with ghosts, but it's also terrifying. So that's why it comes across to so many readers as scary, because I do scare myself when I'm writing them. Like I'm writing what I find frightening.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah, yeah. But for me, like my answer is like I don't necessarily believe, yet it terrifies me.
Yes.
So because that terror exists, then I must deep down believe a little
Awesome.
bit in
Yeah,
order to be scared of it. Yeah.
I agree.
Okay.
And like, well, it's like, oh, I don't really believe in ghosts, but also, oh, you want me to go into that dark basement? No, I will not be doing that. So, I mean, hey, I must believe it on some level, because I'm not going into your dark basement. It's not happening. Forget it.
And I was just going to invite you over so we could explore
No,
my dark
no,
basement.
I'm not going into your dark basement.
It's so people probably think like, oh my God, Riley Sager's basement is like this chamber of horrors or something. It's like, no, there's an elliptical machine and some old furniture and the water heater. That's it. That's
I'm
what's
still
in
not going. I'm not going.
it. So I want to talk about April and Eddie, the two main
Yeah,
characters of Murder Road.
yeah,
They are it was fascinating to me that like before we did when we were emailing I think it was Friday maybe like
yeah.
you said like I liked having two main characters facing this together. I've never seen that in a thriller before, and neither have I. So like
Right.
talk a little bit more about the dynamic between the two of them because they're fascinating characters to me.
Yeah, and I wanted to write specifically in thrillers. Like you just don't see thrillers that are about a married couple who are actually like in love. Like there's a lot of thrillers about like toxic marriages and like the kind of the Gone Girl effect where there's a toxic marriage and like everyone's like lying to each other and all this stuff. And like that's a lot of fun to read. It's very dark to read and it's a lot of fun. But you just don't see one where like there's a central functional relationship. And I wanted to try and write that myself in a thriller, but also I added the layer that because they're just married, they don't know everything about each other, and each of them has things that they haven't told each other yet. So there are secrets happening on both sides. And as the reader is getting to know these characters, they're also, in a way, getting to know each other. So as the reader, you're sort of along for that sort of revelation where they are learning about each other, the things that they didn't already know, but they have to trust each other in this story. Like they just have no choice. They have to trust each other. So it's really like you married somebody, but how much do you really trust? Do you trust this person with your life? Well, you're going to find out. You're going to find out right now whether or not you trust this person with literally with your life. And so I really enjoyed that tension, and I really liked that these characters are kind of flawed, and they're both committed to this marriage, but like neither of them is a perfect person, and now they have to deal with all of that as well as all of the external danger that's going on in the story.
And I really appreciated the fact that like they yes, they're married, but they're still in some ways strangers to each other. And like you said, like they do not know how much, like how the other person is going to react in this
Right,
scary situation they've been thrown into. And there is this sort of sense of like, who did I marry? And I think like
right.
that's a question that like we all like at some point ask ourselves, like, who the heck did I marry? Why are they acting this way? But in this
Yeah.
case, they really are questioning like, who is this person that I took as my spouse, and what are they going to do when there's all this craziness around us, and we are suspected of horrible things, and we're thrust into this deep
There might be
darkness.
ghosts. I mean, I don't know. Am I
Yeah,
seeing a ghost?
yes.
Is the other person seeing a ghost? Like who's seeing what's real? And the husband, Eddie, it's set in 1995. So Eddie is a veteran of Iraq, and he was discharged from the army, and he's got like maybe some level of PTSD. He doesn't know if what he's seeing is real. And April has had a bit of a rough upbringing, and so she's kind of a survivor, and so she's just like she needs to figure out like what's real so that she can like fix it, like she's got to fix this, but she's looking at him going, oh, what is he seeing? And And so there's a lot of trust issues going back and forth, because and that's just really, really juicy as a writer to dig into with these two people. Instead of just having one main character, you've got two basically protagonists, and you got a big juicy problem in between them where how much do they trust each other? And you can just dig into that all you want. And it was very refreshing to write, and I really, really enjoyed it. I love these characters very much. You can kind of tell when you read it. I love both of them very much.
You you can like you could tell that you were in love with the characters. I fell in love with the characters,
Yeah.
and it is a love story. Like
Yes.
it's a scary, twisty mystery slash thriller or urban legend, but
Right.
at the heart, I think is like it's the love story between these two people, and I
Yeah.
thought it was beautifully done. But I'm looking at the Q&A box and I see a really good one from Pam Flanagan. Does your writing affect your dreams?
Does my writing affect my dreams? No, but it does go the other way around. I have had literal nightmares where once I recovered from the nightmare, I was like, damn, that is a good scene. I have actually written my nightmares into my books. It's happened two or three times. I have a couple of times where I had a literal nightmare, and like the next morning, once I was recovered from the nightmare, I was like, "Ooh, I could use that. I could use that." So no, my writing doesn't affect my dreams, but I have put my dreams into my writing.
Is there one that you could share with us, or is it too spoilery?
No, there's one. Well, it was just one of my older books, called An Inquiry into Love and Death, which actually was my second book. And I had a nightmare about my backyard and about the gate of my backyard swinging open violently, like just with no wind, like just swinging open. And I in my dream I had to like go out and like try and grab the gate and close it. And it was the way nightmares are. It was just terrifying in the moment. And then the next day I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And I used that as part of the haunting in that book, where she has to go. The gate is banging and behind her house, and she has to go out in the dark and try and grab the gate. So yes, that was a little dream I had that I
That's
decided was book fodder, as everything is.
I mean, what else do you use in you like as book fodder? Like, do you use like real life things, like nothing like scary, but just like mundane things where you're like, oh, I had a weird encounter in the grocery store. I'm going to put that in a book.
Yeah, and yeah, you don't really. People think that you're going to take a literal person and like put them directly into your book, like in full form. You don't really do that. Like you just sort of, when you're observing people or meeting people, like you just sort of observing like how they react to things, or um, yeah, definitely people, even people you walk by, or snippets of conversations you overhear, like if you're riding the bus or something and you just overhear some people arguing and you're like, ooh, that's good. Yeah, writers are kind of dangerous this way. We use a lot of the stuff we come across. But we don't put it in like there's a direct human being that you just put fully formed into the book, like you use bits and pieces of various things and then you mix them up and you use your imagination for the rest of it, and you just sort of put bits and pieces together. Um, so, and like I say, like this book's set in 1995. I remember, like, I use my memories of what, not just the music and the clothes and stuff, but like what it felt like to be in that time, like what it felt like to be like disconnected and with no cell phone, and how you got around, and what, how just how you went through life. And so I just use a lot of that from my own experience.
I think of the 90s as sort of like our last innocent time.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't innocent, obviously, because like, there was like stuff like
Right.
OJ and like the same things, problems we're seeing today, we had,
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah,
But
for
for
sure.
me, like we it seemed, I don't know, like, and maybe because we were much younger, but but
Yeah.
it just felt like, oh, everything is better in the 90s. And that, like,
Yeah, and I put in the book, like there's a beach called Hunter Beach where all the backpackers go and they just camp there, and there's some guy who's some old hippie who owns it, but he just never is never there. And I'm like, we did that in the 90s. Like you when you were 20 years old, if you felt like you would take a summer between like high school and college, and you would put a backpack on and you would just disappear, and there was no cell phone, so no one, like your parents didn't know where you were, like you were, my brother did that in the 90s. He went backpacking in Asia for like 6 months, And we at one point we got one handwritten postcard that was just like, "Hey, I'm fine. I'm in wherever." And then, but like we didn't know where he was. We didn't know where he was. So it was sort of like I just sort of wanted to revisit that time where like they've got this beach and all these kids just go there, and like if the way you called home was you went and found a payphone and called collect or something, and tried to, and you did that like every once in a while, but your parents did not know where you were all the time. I think these were teenagers and people in their 20s, but like their parents just did not know where they were. So it was sort of more innocent that way, where you were just like, I'm gonna put my backpack on and go have fun, like you didn't really think about all the bad things that could happen, I guess.
Yeah, and this plays into the book where like you were dependent on the kindness of strangers.
Yes.
Like I remember a senior in high school, my car breaking down, and I was in the middle of nowhere, not on a murder road, thank God.
Yeah, thank
But I
God.
had to like walk like half a mile to like the nearest house and knock on their door at like 10:30 at night and be like, "Hi, I'm a complete stranger. May I use your phone to call my parents?"
Yes.
And they just let me inside and use their phone. And I called my
Crazy.
parents. And so like that would never happen today. But like
No.
there is this bit of that in Murder Road where like you mentioned the bed and breakfast owner, like
Right.
she's helping these people and she doesn't need to. And today I think like if the book took place today, she would not.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And yeah, I think that's very true. And I do think you don't really want to look back with like rose-colored glasses. Like everything was so great then, and it's so terrible now. Like there was problems then, but like there are certain aspects of it, like you say, they were so innocent. And as a young person, you just did a bunch of dumb young person stuff. And there was
Mhm.
no record of it. There was not on the internet. There was no photo of it. There's no photo of like whatever dumb thing you did. It's just gone. It's just gone into the sands of time, the mists of time forever. And
Such
it's
a
like that's best.
I think so. Yeah, thank goodness. Yeah.
Whatever bad
So,
haircut you had, if there was no photo of it, well, you never had that bad haircut, did you? It's all yeah.
so here are some questions that are not well. There's one more like related to the book, sort of. And I get this a lot, and you probably get this a lot. Any plans for movie or TV adaptations in the works?
Yeah, there's been various options on a few of the different books. There is nothing that's in production right now. Yeah, that's a common question I get too. And until it's happened to you, you don't really understand the timelines of this stuff are so insanely long. Like someone will option the book, but that's just optioning like the possibility of maybe making something, and it might take them a year to 2 years to like even remotely come up with like the funding to do something like that. And it's just such a mysterious thing, and the timelines are incredibly long. So I don't have anything that's imminently in production. No, I do not. But various things have been optioned or like re-optioned or like this or that or the other thing. But like, there's nothing that's like on the cusp of being like made right now.
Yeah, it's a very weird time in Hollywood right now. It's
Yeah, that was
very
the thing. I mean,
strange.
then we also just had that big strike, and well, there was COVID, and then there was business as usual for a little bit, and then there was a strike. So that's the other thing is the timelines got even longer because stuff was just not being produced for a long time.
Yeah, it's I see like in the comments like I've learned not to get excited when I see an article that something was optioned. That is smart.
That
That
is
is the
smart.
best way to go because there's no guarantee anything will actually get made. So
Right.
here's some good like sort of non murder road questions. If you weren't writing, where do you feel like life's road would have taken you? Like you worked in television for many, many, many years. What did
Yes,
you do?
I
And
did.
how does that affect your writing actually?
No, it does not affect my writing. What I did in television was the most boring budgeting stuff that
Oh,
the last job before I left was literally Excel spreadsheets. That's all I did. Was Excel spreadsheets of like numbers of money numbers of how much it cost to make a certain show, and you had to like figure out, and you had to go find all the costs and put them all into Excel spreadsheets so that they knew how much they were spending. That's literally what I was doing. It was very very boring. And everyone's like, "Oh, you worked in television. It must have been so exciting." Like I was like a journalist in like Afghanistan or something. Like, no, no, sir. I did Excel spreadsheets. That the TV does not get made without the boring people. The boring people behind the scenes also make TV. So I was not a writer. I was not working on any fun shows. And it was just my day job. It was just my day job. But I was in television for a long time. And I don't know. I don't know if I had never become a writer. I don't know where I would have gone. I don't know actually, because I did love TV for a long time, but TV changed so monumentally. I mean, I got into TV in the 90s, and I mean the changes have been so monumental. So I can't really think of what I would have done if I didn't eventually become a writer. Like I think with most of us writers, after you've done it for a while, you're like, yeah, like unemployable. Like no one should hire me for
We
anything.
have no skills. Like we
I
well,
have no
we have like one
skills.
skill, which is writing a book.
Yeah, and like I don't have any, like I've set my own schedule. So like I'm not showing up at your job at 9 o'clock in the morning. Like, pardon me. So we're like unemployable people after a while. It's like
We
no one
really
should
are.
hire us for literally anything.
We
So
need to
maybe I
keep
would have
doing
been
this
like some
until we
type of
die.
I guess I would have been some type of a freelancer so that I could not have to report to people because I'm bad at it now. I was good at it for a long time, and then I was like, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to write books.
Well, um, where did I find it? Oh, and that was question that was asked by Fernando Javier. So thank you. We've got another good one. If you could have a writing spot anywhere in the world, where would that spot be? And this was asked by Brittany Golden.
A writing spot,
Yeah, anywhere.
a specific spot. Okay, this is going to be very, very specific. When I was growing up, the Central Library in the city I lived in, which was London, Ontario, the Central Library was the spot where I used to go to hide out from the world and read and work. And it is long gone. Was demolished, made long, long ago. But if I could pick anything and wave a magic wand, I would bring that library back, and that's where I would go work. And it was kind of when you went to the library back in the day, they didn't, for some reason, they just didn't cull their collection very much. So it was the kind of library where you could wander through the stacks and find some like stupidly old book that nobody had actually checked out for like 20 years, and because they hadn't really like gone through their collection. I found a bunch, you could find random stuff there. And it was really big, it just had so much space, and it was absolutely silent because almost nobody went there, which is why it eventually went away. So
Um,
if I could, I would go back in time and I would recreate that library, and that's where I would work all the time. That's where I would work.
that is a good your own private library. That's a nice one.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, if you could read any thriller book over again for the very first time, what book would you pick? And this was asked by Lee Bartlett. This is another great question.
A thriller book that I could read for the first time again.
Or it could be any book. We'll
Any
say
book?
we'll make it any book. It doesn't have to be a thriller.
Well, if it's a thriller book, I'm going to say Gone Girl because I remember
Mm.
reading Gone Girl when it came out a long time ago. And, it's kind of like it's an older book now. So there was a movie. And so kind of everyone knows the plot of Gone Girl. But when I first read Gone Girl when it came out, I went in completely blind. And from one page to the, I had literally no idea where it was going or what was going to happen. And so it was quite a reading experience the first time I read it because like I knew that, I knew nothing about the plot. I did not know the ending. I did not know where it was going. So I would say Gone Girl will be my top thriller pick for sure. I'm gonna make that just my choice because I remember that reading experience. I guess any book at all, to read it for the first time again would probably be the first book of Game of Thrones by George R. R. Martin, which I read a long,
Okay.
long time ago, way before the HBO show. But I remember that first book, Game of Thrones, which it's like 800 or 900 pages. It's a crazy long book. And you cannot stop reading it. And again, like I read it way before the show. I had no idea like where it was going, what the plot was, who these people were, like what this world was. And when you read that book for the first time, if you go in blind, you cannot stop. You cannot stop. I did not want to work. I did not want to sleep. I did not want to, like it was like, I have to go to work. Are you kidding me? I have better things. Do you understand where I am in the story? So, I mean, it's such an incredibly written book. And, all those books are, but I remember reading that first book too. That was a big one.
So I think we have like time for two more questions. One I'll take from the Q&A. This is from Jennifer Good. How do you go about titling your books? Does the title come first or the story?
The title, I always have a working title when I'm working on it. And then I just cross my fingers and hope that my publisher likes the title. But the title is like something that the publisher has quite a bit of say on.
They do, yes.
Because if you pick, like, for example, my working title for the Sundown Motel was Night Shift. Okay. And which, like, that's cool. But then I went to my publisher, I was like, this is called Night Shift. And they looked it up and they're like, well, okay, Stephen King has used that title. Nora Roberts has used that title. And Charlaine Harris has used that title. So it's kind of like you're really up against like some pretty big names. And like you're kind of like setting yourself up for failure if you're using Charlaine Harris's title and Stephen King's literal title. I'm like, okay, let's come up with a different title. So there is a bit of like industry stuff that comes into play with titles. But that said, The Haunting of Maddie Clare was always my working title from the beginning, and that title made it all the way to the end. The Broken Girls was my working title, and that made it all the way to the end. So I do sometimes come up with a title, and everyone in the publisher is like, "That's fantastic. No reason not to use it. Let's go with it." And so that's always fun. But The Haunting of Maddie Clare and The Broken Girls were the two where, like, from page one, I knew that was the title of this book. And if my publisher was going to nix that title, I had no other ideas. I was like, I don't know what to call this. One title for this book.
Okay, so last question. I like to ask this of people. It started when I got to interview Zakiya Harris about the other Black girl, because she'd been
Yes.
all over the news, getting asked all lots of questions, done all the interviews. So I wanted to come up with a question that I knew she'd never been asked before. And so I like to end these things with this. And it's very hard hitting, so brace yourself.
Oh, okay. I'm ready.
Who is your favorite Muppet?
Damn, Riley.
It can be from the Muppet Show, Fraggle Rock. It can be any of them. But who is your favorite Muppet?
Oh, can it be a Sesame Street Muppet?
It can be a Sesame Street Muppet. Yeah.
Because I always loved Grover.
That's a good one.
Grover would be my number one when I was a little kid.
Grover works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I see someone, Team Angel or Team Spike? Real quick.
Angel.
Since you're a Buffy fan.
Yeah. I don't know. Spike was never my thing, but I know that he was everybody's thing. That's all I'm going to say about that. But he was just never my thing.
Well, I believe we are out of time. Simone, thank you so much. This was so fun. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And Simone, best of luck with the book. You will kill it. You are going on tour tomorrow. Pub Day, it's all exciting.
Yeah.
For those of you who have ordered a copy with a signed book plate, they should be arriving within 8 to 10 business days. Thank you so much. Thank you, Simone. Everyone, get Murder Road and enjoy it. You will love it. It's
Riley,
awesome.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking to me. And everybody, I snuck an early copy of Riley's next book. It is fantastic. You're going to love it. I have to add that in. You are going to be absolutely blown away by this next book of his. So definitely June. It comes out in June. Pick it up in June. Because I got to read it.
June. Well, this was awesome. Thank you, everyone, so much. And yeah, everyone, have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.